Up to 30% of initial investment budgets for foreign companies in India are often consumed by unexpected infrastructure and utility costs alone. By understanding these often underestimated aspects from the outset, companies can effectively manage their initial budget and pave the way for strong profitability. In this video, we'll break down the key infrastructure and utility elements that, while appearing individually manageable, particularly for smaller setups, require a comprehensive budgeting strategy to prevent cumulative costs from impacting your initial investment. Let's look at infrastructure considerations and start with electricity. In many places, don't assume seamless power. India's power grid, while improving, can be unreliable. You need to factor in connection fees. So initial connection charges can range anywhere from 50,000 to 500,000 rupees, depending on your power load and location. This isn't always a straightforward one-time fee. Expect potential bureaucratic delays and additional charges for inspections or upgrades. Then there's backup power. Inverters and generators are often a necessity. A decent industrial-grade generator can cost anywhere from 200,000 to 2 million rupees, plus ongoing fuel and maintenance. You need to budget at least 10 to 15% of your initial infrastructure budget for this if you plan to set up a manufacturing unit. Next, you have fluctuations and stabilizers. Voltage fluctuations, which are pretty common, can fry your equipment. Industrial stabilizers can add another 50,000 to 500,000 rupees to your setup costs. Next, we look at water supply. Now, access to reliable water isn't guaranteed everywhere. Similar to electricity, initial water connection fees and security deposits can range from 20,000 to 200,000 rupees. If municipal supply is unreliable or unavailable, drilling a borewell can cost between 100,000 to 500,000 rupees, and water purification systems can add another 50,000 to 300,000 depending on your needs. Water storage tanks can cost between 30,000 and 200,000 rupees depending on capacity. Then, of course, there is road access. Don't assume that your location will have perfect connectivity. In certain industrial zones or less developed areas, you might be asked to contribute to road construction or upgrades, which can be a significant unexpected cost, potentially ranging from anywhere from 100,000 to 1 million rupees or even more. I know of several companies who purchased industrial land for building a factory and were promised a decent road right up to their factory. But in reality, after 2 or 3 years of running after the local authorities, they simply gave up and had the roads constructed at their own cost. You may also need to develop access roads within your purchased land and do some basic landscaping, which can easily add another 5 to 10% on your land development budget. The cost of utilities is also not negligible, and it's important to understand this well as you budget for your initial investment. Let's start with electricity bills. Industrial power tariffs vary wildly by state and consumption. Budget around 8 to 15 rupees per kilowatt hour. Factor in potential tariff hikes and demand charges. Implement energy-efficient practices from day one to mitigate these ongoing costs. Then we have water bills. Industrial water charges also vary. Budget around 20 to 50 rupees per kiloliter. Explore water recycling and conservation methods to reduce long-term expenses. Then there's waste management. Proper waste disposal is crucial and comes with costs. Factor in collection fees, potential treatment charges for hazardous waste, and compliance with local regulation. Budget around 5,000 to 50,000 rupees per month, depending on the scale of your operations. Finally, internet and communication. We all know that reliable high-speed internet is vital, and thankfully India has some of the best internet connectivity in Asia, but it also doesn't always come cheap. Business-grade connections can cost between 10 to 50,000 rupees per month. Don't forget about costs for internal networking and communication systems. Aside from the basic infrastructure and utilities, you also need to consider some other curveballs. The first is bureaucracy and delays. India's bureaucracy can be a beast. Factor in potential delays in approvals, licenses, and permits. These delays translate directly into lost time and money. For example, an idle workforce or a delayed project launch. Budget a contingency of at least 10 to 15% for time overruns. Then there's compliance and legal fees. Navigating Indian regulations requires expert legal counsel. Initial setup fees can range anywhere from 100,000 to 1 million rupees. Ongoing compliance and potential litigation costs are another factor. Next, we have local permits and approvals. I covered this in my previous video on land acquisition. Beyond the major licenses, expect a barrage of local permits for everything from construction to signage. Each comes with its own fees and potential delays. Budget between 50,000 to 500,000 for these. Physical security is also something to take note of. Depending on your location and industry, security costs like personnel surveillance systems can be significant. Budget at least 5 to 10% of your operational expenses for this. Cultural and social factors is also something I mentioned in my video on land acquisition. Understanding local customs and building relationships can incur unexpected costs, for example, local community engagement initiatives. Failing to do so can lead to delays and resistance. Last but not least, inflation and currency fluctuations. India's inflation rate can be volatile, and currency fluctuations can impact import costs. Build in a buffer for these economic eventualities. In my experience of helping foreign businesses in India, there is a fourth, often overlooked aspect of costing that can quickly become significant, and that's to do with your manpower. Now, we're not just talking middle management, because many smaller companies start by hiring senior sales leaders. And it's not always straightforward to find, recruit, and retain good talent. So we start with the recruitment costs. Now, we are all aware of standard recruitment fees, but what about the following points? There can be extended hiring cycles. Filling specialized roles can take significantly longer than anticipated, especially outside major metropolitan areas. This delay translates to lost productivity and potentially paying existing staff overtime to cover the gap. You should budget for 2 or 3 months of vacancy costs for critical roles. Then we can have multiple interview rounds and assessments. The Indian hiring process often involves several interview stages, aptitude tests, and background checks. The internal time spent by your team on this adds up, so factor in man hours as a hidden cost. Next is budgeting well for travel and accommodation for candidates is super important. Many companies start in India by hiring sales executives who are expected to travel all over the country. Remember, it's like hiring 1 or 2 people to cover all of Europe or all of the United States. That's a lot of flights and hotels, which can quickly add up, depending on the destinations and the frequency of travel. Then there's training and onboarding, which is more than just orientation. You can have extended onboarding periods where integrating new hires into the Indian work culture and your company's processes may require a longer onboarding period than other regions. This means a longer period of lower productivity for the new employee. Language and cultural training. Now, depending on your workforce and location, you might need to invest in language training or cross-cultural sensitivity programs for both your local and expat staff. What I've seen from my experience is that many firms require the Indian employee to travel to Europe or the United States for an initial orientation in order to begin work. And in many cases, obtaining a visa quickly for the US or Europe can be problematic and cause delays of several months. India has a vast talent pool, but specific skills might require additional investment in training and development programs to meet your company's standards. Then, of course, we have statutory compliance and benefits, which are all in addition to the basic salary. There's a provident fund, gratuity, and other statutory contributions. Employer contributions to schemes like provident fund and gratuity are mandatory and add a significant percentage to your base salary costs. Understand the specific regulations in your state. Providing competitive health insurance and other benefits is crucial for attracting and retaining talent. These costs need to be factored into your overall manpower budget. Be aware of regulations regarding leave encashment and severance pay, which can become significant liabilities. Finally, managing a diverse workforce is also something that you shouldn't overlook. There will be communication challenges. There are language barriers and different communication styles that can lead to misunderstandings and inefficiencies, requiring investment in clear communication strategies and potentially some translation services. Then there are, of course, cultural nuances in management. Effective management requires understanding and adapting to local cultural norms and practices. Mismanagement due to cultural insensitivity can lead to decreased productivity and higher attrition. In my experience, I have often observed that companies need to spend more time with their Indian teams. It's not because they're less capable, but because they are geographically and sometimes culturally distant. So, in many cases, the parent company needs to keep sending someone to visit, accompany the team on sales meetings, and generally spend extra time managing them. So, that also adds time and cost to the equation. To summarize, when you are in the budgeting phase for your India project, I strongly recommend the following steps. Perform detailed due diligence. Invest heavily in upfront research. Engage local experts, consultants, legal advisors, and experienced businesses. Do realistic budgeting. Pad your initial budget by at least 20 to 30% to account for the unexpected. Adopt the phase approach. Consider a phased rollout to better understand and adapt to local conditions and costs. Cultivate local partnerships. Partner with local companies who understand the nuances of the Indian market. Do contingency planning. Have a clear contingency plan and readily accessible funds to address unforeseen issues. Setting up in India offers immense potential, but ignoring hidden costs is a recipe for disaster. Go in prepared, be meticulous, and factor in the realities on the ground. Your success here depends not just on your product or service, but on your ability to navigate the intricate and often unpredictable business landscape. Plan smart, budget realistically, and you'll stand a much better chance of succeeding in this market.